Hello Year 5, this is Mrs Sweeting and this is a recorded lesson for Thursday for English for all of Year 5, both forms. This week we'd like you to write a newspaper article all about the Titanic sinking, which is why on Monday we asked you to write a list of some facts that you'd found out from watching the animation, and also that's why our reading comprehension was exactly about the Titanic too, so that you feel you've got enough information to be able to create a really good newspaper article. As you can see on the sheet in front of you, there are 4 things we're going to look at in this recorded lesson. Don't forget, because it's recorded, you can stop the recording, press pause and replay any of it at any time. It will help you to write a really great quality newspaper article. Okay, firstly, the whole purpose of a newspaper is to inform the reader, is to give the reader information about something that's just happened. And that's what we want you to do. What happened, you know, because we've got lots of information. But what's interesting is what a journalist does. That's the name of a newspaper writer. A journalist uses the facts that they want to. They pick out facts to help write from their perspective. So I'm just going to show you 3 newspaper headlines that have been very recent, and I bet you can guess what they're about. Here they are. So the first one says end of freedom. The second one says Britain shuts up shop, if you can just see the P. And the third one simply says house arrest. Of course, these are about the lockdown that's occurred because of coronavirus. But these 3 newspaper headlines suggest that the reporter thinks that it's a really bad thing that's happening. This third one, house arrest, is a bit like saying that we are being punished and we're having to stay at home under arrest. So when you're writing your newspaper report about the Titanic, you can also think about what sort of headline and what sort of opinion you're going to write from. I'll talk about more of that in a minute. Okay, I think we should look at the opening paragraph of a newspaper report. I've got an example here of a newspaper report that is about when Tim Peake, the astronaut, landed back on Earth. Now you can't say it all, but what I want to show you is this first paragraph. The first paragraph is 1 sentence, but in that 1 sentence it gives quite a lot of key bits of information. The rest of the article explains in much more detail all this key information. But always in a newspaper article, your first paragraph should really give all the details that you need. Okay, and these details are called the 5 W's. And the 5 W's are what, when, where, who, and the 5th one is why. But that why, that 5th one, is often what the rest of the newspaper article is sort of about. So if we were going to write a newspaper report about the Titanic, we'd need to explain what happened, when, where, who, as in who was involved, and why. Now, if you can, you want to try and get all of that into just 1 or 2 short sentences. You can press pause to have a think about what that might look like. So I'm going to model my introductory paragraph if I was going to write a newspaper article about the Titanic. I might say something like, tragedy struck in the early hours of yesterday morning as HMS Titanic collided with an iceberg in the Atlantic Ocean and sank quickly, with reports of many fatalities. Sorry, that should be an I. Fatalities. Actually, I'm going to change that word to make it really clear to the reader that I mean deaths. Okay, so that's my opening paragraph, and I want to make sure that I've got the what, Titanic sank, so I've got the what, who, well they're the people that have died, I've got them, when, that's yesterday morning, I've got the when, I've got the where in the Atlantic Ocean, and I've even got the why, the iceberg. So after you've written your introductory paragraph, see if you can check whether you've got those W's. The when, yesterday morning, the why, the iceberg, the where, the Atlantic Ocean, the what, the fact that Titanic sank, and the who, the people that lost their lives. So after you've completed your opening paragraph, we'd like you to have a look at this report, newspaper report planning sheet. It's hard to see it all on here, but you have got a copy of all of these documents on Firefly for you to look at, but I just want to take you through some of it. So on this planning sheet, you can see it's already filled with lots and lots of text, because we don't want you to spend ages writing on this plan. But this plan should be a really good guide for how you should structure your work, and also the sorts of things that you can include in each paragraph. So, of course, you need the name for your newspaper, and it needs a date, and you also need a headline. I'll come on and show you those at the end, so don't worry about that for now. I'm just going to zoom in on the first opening paragraph, which we've talked about already. You don't have to fill in on this sheet because you have got all of these notes that you made on Monday, so you should have answers to all of those questions, and you just I just showed you my modelled example as well. So we can now move on to the second box over here. I'm just going to zoom out a bit. Okay, so you can see this second box. And what I want you to do after the first paragraph is to break up the story chronologically. That means in time order. So try and write in the past tense in time order. The second paragraph could go into much more detail about the sinking, how the events unfolded. It should really possibly be your biggest paragraph. Now, if you want, you can split it up into smaller paragraphs, but that's what should come next, more about the sinking. And then the third paragraph, you might want to talk about what made the Titanic so special. So this is where you can talk about what Titanic is, who made it, and why it's so special. Why is this such a big news story? You could talk about the luxury rooms and the facilities. Remember that video we watched and the pictures we saw on Monday? The fact that it was its maiden voyage, its first ever voyage. It's the biggest ever ocean liner. And it was famous for being known as the unsinkable ship, except that's exactly what it did on its very first journey. So the second paragraph could be all about what it's like on board before it sank. the third paragraph. The fourth paragraph, you might want to talk more about the people on board, and this is where you can get some quotes in. So you might want to talk about maybe who was to blame so far, what reports are coming back in. You might want to talk about why there were so many deaths of third-class passengers compared to first class, especially men. You might want to talk about the decisions and the actions of the crew when they knew that the ship was going to sink. You might want to talk about all the different reports that we've heard about what different passengers did when they knew the Titanic would sink. So, for example, none of the engineers survived. They all decided to stay on board the ship till the last minute. There was a group of musicians on board that decided to carry on playing until the ship sank, and they all lost their lives too. There's some really interesting stories of people that acted in different ways. You might want to include that. Again, you could structure your story in a different way, but you definitely need that second paragraph with all the details about the sinking. The next section on this report plan sheet that we'd just like you to have a look at, that you can see it's all on Firefly, is the opinions and quotes section. We would like you to include some quotes of people that had been on board the Titanic who survived, or quotes from people that were on the nearby ship. There are many quotes out there, and this website here has a really nice selection of quotes. Some actually from some of the crew that didn't survive but that were made beforehand. So what we want you to do is to include useful quotes, but not just randomly stick them in anywhere. We want you to really think about, if you're writing, for example, if you're writing about the lucky survivors, you might want to include a quote from somebody. There was a man called Charles Lightoller on board, and he said how striking the water was, like 1,000 knives being driven into one's body. And you could talk about how most people died because it was so cold in the water. So use quotes within the text to try and explain your answers. Sorry, not your answers, but explain your writing. The reason journalists use quotes is because it makes their story just that more believable and real. And that's what we'd like you to do too. Go onto this website and you'll see lots. Now, what you could do is go a bit further and look at opinions. I mentioned this at the beginning, but what you could do is you could be really clever and you could decide beforehand what you, as a journalist at the time of writing, really think about what happened on the Titanic. Maybe you're really, really cross that so many people in third class died and weren't rescued. And maybe your whole article could come from that place of you being very annoyed, and you could maybe be blaming the crew for all these deaths. So everything you write might have that thought behind it. Maybe you're a journalist who has been employed by the company who made the Titanic, White Star. Maybe you've been asked to write a newspaper article about the sinking, of course, but that paints the ship and its designers in a very good light and blames it all on just a freak accident that was nobody's fault. So have a think. It'd be really clever if you could think about, what do you think before you start writing? See if you can put yourself in the shoes of a reporter from the time. And then at the end, you'll need a final paragraph. And that final paragraph has to end the article in some way. I've put some suggestions on this sheet for you. You might want to ask a really thought-provoking question, such as, when will someone accept responsibility for this tragedy? You might want to end your article explaining that more information about this tragedy will follow tomorrow, which is what happens quite a bit. Or you might end your newspaper article with a thought-provoking quote from a witness. If you go to this website, you could end with something that really makes you think as the reader. Don't forget your reader all the time. Write for that person. Finally, I just want to show you a couple of writing templates. This is the one that we'd like you to use if you want to handwrite your newspaper report. If you don't have a printer, all you need to do is copy the layout of this one and do it in your red lined book that we've given you. But if you can print this out. This will be on Firefly, and it's got different sections. The top section is for the name of the newspaper. So I'm going to call mine the Daily Reporter. I'm going to use capital letters. There, you can just about see that, the Daily Reporter. And at this side, I'm just going to put the date. Now I know that the reports of the Titanic didn't come through. They didn't know it had sunk for a couple of days. So I'm going to put the 17th of April on mine. 1912. Okay, the next box here, this is for your headline. And remember those headlines I showed you at the beginning, they don't have to be lots of words. I think I'm going to call mine Tragic Titanic. Tragic Titanic, because I quite like this ick repeated ending and the repeated T as well. But there are so many ideas you could have. And again, remember, if you've got an opinion as the reporter about this, you might want to be blaming somebody even in your title. Here you can include a photograph or a drawing of the Titanic. You might want to do when it was broken in half. You might want to draw a picture of a lifeboat. It's up to you. And then here you write a caption. So here you would write something about this photo or this drawing. It's up to you. And then underneath in this column, you can start your introduction. Remember that short, really important first paragraph. And then the next column can be the rest of your writing. You'll see on the second page of this template is a slightly different structure, but you carry on down the first column and then you go to the second column and you can put another picture here or a big quote there or something. And if you still need more room, then there's a third page and that is just lots of lines so you can finish your report. Okay? We are expecting you to be able to, I think, definitely fill this first page, and possibly, if you can, if you think about how narrow the columns are, try and fill the second page too, okay? But keep to the structure that we looked at. Okay, good luck with it all. Remember to play any part of this video again. It'll all be on Firefly for you to see. Bye for now.